If you are wondering if it's finally time to outsource your account management, this episode is for you. In today's episode, I'm excited to share with you some of the best practices and the exact checklist I give agency owners to calculate whether or not they should hire an account manager. So let's get into today's episode.
Welcome to the Happy Clients Podcast, brought to you by Dot & Company. Whether you're a virtual assistant, an agency owner, or a client-facing account manager, we all deal with clients. Lucky for you, client management is what we do best. Now, let's dig in, chat cam life, and have some fun along the way. Cheers to happy clients.
So today we are going to cover a few things when it comes to really identifying when you should hire an account manager. So we're going to talk about some of the signs that it's time to offload, how to evaluate capacity within your account management team or roles, and some of the hidden costs of waiting too long to outsource this role. So if you listened to my episode a few episodes ago about how I took 6 months off, these are some of the things that I actually did while growing my team to identify when it was time to offload account management. First things first, let's talk about some of the red flags that maybe you're seeing within your agency, but these are some things that you might see that it's really actually time to hire. And they can be things that don't necessarily show up as a super red flag. They might just be things that are taking a lot of your time. So let's get into it. Client load is capping your growth. So oftentimes I see this with agency owners. They're actually turning away clients and they're probably pausing on their sales because there's just no one to manage it. It actually happens a lot more than you would think. I'm on, sales calls or strategizing with an agency owner, and they're telling me, yeah, I know I need to bring in an account manager soon, but I just don't have time to onboard them because I don't even have time to take on more clients because we're just so busy and I don't have anyone to manage it. And they're just kind of spiraling because they're actually stopping their own agency from growing. So if you see this happening within your agency where your client load is actually capping your growth, definitely a red flag. And it is definitely time to hire somebody to manage your clients. It doesn't necessarily have to be that your agency is growing at a really rapid pace either. Because I know whenever I'm chatting with agency owners, they think, oh, well, I need to be bringing on 20 new clients a month or maybe 10 clients a month in order to bring on an account manager. Really, you just have to look at where your growth being stunted. And if you're seeing that, map it out on a graph. If that is actually happening, then that's a time when you need to actually bring in somebody to manage your clients. The second red flag is you're burnt out. And as an agency owner, we all go through seasons where it might feel like we're dropping the balls and things are just not running as smoothly as we would like it to. And your clients, their emails are not being returned to them on time and your follow-ups are slipping through and you're honestly just mentally fried when it comes to managing your clients. Definitely, that is a time when you need to consider getting some help when it comes to managing your clients, because that is not something that goes away the bigger you get, unfortunately. So as this is happening, you need to really give yourself a good gut check and realize that this is not something that is sustainable. And number 3, I see this way too much, is your contractors are now managing your clients. So you as the agency owner are getting so busy that you've just given the client management to your contractors. This is definitely a big no-no in my land. I think these are very different skill sets. And if you are growing a real stable agency, this is not something that you want to be seeing. You don't want your contractors managing your clients or even your media buyers or people on the back end. In my opinion, those people are very good at their craft and we want to keep them on the back managing the accounts that they're managing, because execution is not the same as account management. Account managers have a very specific skill set and this is what they are really good at. which is managing and retaining clients. So you want to keep account managers in their zone and you want to keep executors in their own zone. So if you're seeing that you're bringing in your contractors or your media buyers to manage your clients, that is definitely a red flag. We once had this agency come to us where their designer, their backend web designer, was actually running all of their client calls. And they were wondering why retention was dropping. Clients were leaving like flies and they couldn't figure it out. They were like, we're designing beautiful websites. It's on time. It's on budget. We just don't know why clients are leaving. And then they started to dig in and actually watch some of these calls that the designer was having. And unfortunately, sometimes when you get designers or media buyers or specialists managing accounts, they can take things very personally, just like a lot of us do within our agency. Things, maybe feedback, they take it personal and they start reacting on calls. And this started happening. And they started to watch these calls and they were like, oh no, this is not good. We can't have our designer actually taking these calls. So what they ended up doing was bringing in a part-time account manager to kind of be the middleman between the designer and the client. And things turned around instantly. And what they realized was that an account manager is somebody who can actually take the emotional part out of feedback from clients and reactions from clients. And they can be this person who, I want to say, sits in the middle between clients and internal team members. And they can translate things so that nobody is getting offended or nobody is reacting. And that, I remember when this client was telling me this story, because it is something that I have always truly believed in, because I have worked with a lot of designers in the past, is that we need to keep people in their zones of genius. And you brought on a web designer because they're such a good designer, not because they're very strategic when it comes to managing clients and relationships. So if that is you, maybe this is a time to consider hiring somebody to manage your accounts. So let's get into our checklist. So this is how we help agency owners really make the decision with data to determine, is it the right time to bring on an account manager or not? And making sure this decision is not just a gut instinct. We want this decision to be something that is backed by data within your own agency, because your agency is very different than somebody else's, and you need to make sure this fits within your business. So this checklist is going to help you. It's really going to help you have this clear picture of where your time and energy and bottlenecks really are. So grab a notebook or take a mental note, or maybe just come back to this episode, because I'm going to walk you through what these prompts are that will help you really determine, is now the time, or maybe I need to bring on a few more clients. So first thing we look at is client communication load. So a few questions I want you to ask yourself. How many hours per week are spent in client meetings? The reason that I look at this is because I could chat with agency A and agency B, and they could have very different client meeting loads. So some agencies do weekly calls for an hour with all their clients. Some do monthlies. That's going to take up a lot less time to do monthly calls than weeklies. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing your weekly calls. It's just the way that your business is set up and what you've deemed to be the most efficient and most meaningful for your clients. Number 2 is hours per week spent writing reports or doing updates. So I know we've talked a lot about AI here on the podcast recently, but how much time are you or your team members spending writing reports or weekly updates? I want you to keep track of all of these things. And also, number 3 is how many hours per week are spent in client emails and follow-ups. This is something that actually gets lost a lot because we're not generally individually tracking every single email, every single Slack message, text message, phone call that you are actually spending with your clients. But I want you to spend a week actually tracking the hours that you're spending on follow-ups and check-ins with your clients, and start to take a really good look at this total when it comes to client communication load. So make a note. Maybe it's 10 hours a week. Maybe it's 30 hours a week. Most agency owners who are still running accounts are spending upwards of 20 hours a week just on communication. If this is more than 10 hours, it's costing you leadership time. It is costing you time that you could and should be spending on the business. Number 2 is internal management load. So this looks like, how many hours per week are you spending in internal meetings related to client work? So oftentimes there'll be hey, can we just sync up about Bob's accounts? I just want to go through and strategize some things. Or let's get this onboarding call on the books for the internal team. It takes 3 hours to kind of build that strategy out. Things like that. What are you spending internal with your team related to client work? Also, how many hours per week are you doing account management admin? This is another big one. So think organizing assets, chasing contractors, compiling notes, sending call recordings, following up on things. If you feel like you are a project manager instead of a business owner, definitely a sign that it's time to bring in an account manager. The next thing that I look at with agencies is the client volume snapshot. So I want you to take a look at your current total active clients, your expected new clients each month. So how many clients are you bringing in? And then what is your expected monthly churn rate? So the percentage or the average clients that are leaving every month. If this feels manageable now, but you're looking at, okay, I'm going to be bringing in 10 new clients every single month, but my churn is low, this is going to change very quickly. So this snapshot is going to allow you to take a look at the next 6 months and say, wow, I'm actually planning to double my client load in the next 6 months. Even if my current workload feels manageable, it will not be here very, very soon. So take a good snapshot of that. And the last piece that I look at with agency owners is financial indicators. So you want to look at your MRR, your monthly recurring revenue. If you are an agency hitting $50K a month in MRR, oftentimes you're going to hit a ceiling without an account manager around that $50K mark, even less sometimes. We see a lot of agency owners who are at that $30 to $50K a month MRR. Once they bring in an account manager, things tend to skyrocket from there. And then lastly, how many hours of support do you actually need? That's really important. Because if you could offload 20 hours a week, what would you do with that time? I always come back to my example of when I actually got out of account management myself and I removed I think it was 15 to 20 hours of account management a week that I was still responsible for. And this was a year and a half into my agency. I can point on a graph exactly when I offloaded my own accounts. And I can see that things just took off from there. I was able to work on sales. I was working on marketing. I was working on the whole client experience instead of being that project manager, making sure I was living in accounts, making sure that I was that go-to person for everything. So things will change drastically once you do remove yourself from the day-to-day. So let's talk a little bit about the cost of hiring, maybe when it's too late. I see this often when agencies will come to us. This actually happens more than you would imagine. When an agency comes to us, they're maybe at that $50K a month in MRR or maybe a little bit bigger, and they're considering bringing in an account manager. And the agency owner is the one who is stuck in the day-to-day communication. So they live in Slack. They cannot even take a day off. They are always on the client calls. They're always the one putting out the fires. And they'll come to us and they'll say, okay, I feel like I need an account manager soon. I'm just going to wait until I hit, double the client load, or until the pain gets so painful that I cannot handle it any longer. When those agencies come back to us, maybe 6, 12, 18 months later, things are not in a better place. They're actually worse. Even though the agency is bigger, things are just crumbling. You can just tell when speaking with this agency owner that things feel like they're burning, and the agency owner's burnt out. They're losing clients because they feel neglected, and they're missing these sales opportunities because they're simply too busy to bring on any more clients. So my thought is, when you're thinking about the cost of hiring this role, the earlier that you can offload this financially, on this snapshot that we just figured out together, the earlier that you can offload this, the sooner that you can focus on what actually moves the needle in your business. So maybe that's growth, maybe that's leadership, maybe that's innovation, maybe that's finding the next AI tool for your industry. Whatever that is, you need to figure out how you can offload the client management as soon as you possibly can so that you can focus on the bigger picture. But if you're an agency owner where you actually want to talk to your clients and you actually want to spend the majority of your time speaking with your clients, then maybe you don't need somebody full time, and maybe a part-time account manager could be a really great starting point for you. So what I would encourage you to do is, even starting with 10 hours, 15 hours a month of fractional support, that can actually change your life as an agency owner. That can free you up so much time and energy to focus on what actually matters. So if any of this sounds like you, I'm going to tell you it's time. It's time to think about bringing in somebody to manage your clients for you. And if you need help figuring this out, definitely reach out. We chat with agency owners every single day and help them identify where these bottlenecks might be within their agency. So let us help you strategize what comes next for you in your business. I'm here to tell you things could look a lot different in a few months from now if you put in the right people into the right seats. So thank you so much for listening to this episode. I really hope it was helpful and it gives you a really strategic snapshot of when makes sense to hire an account manager. And again, as always, if you need help strategizing, reach out to us at dotandcompany.co. I'll see you on the next episode. And of course, again, questions that you want answered on this podcast, please reach out and email us hello@dotandcompany.co. We'll see you on the next episode.
Cheers to happy clients.